All right, I think we're going to get started. Welcome everybody. There's plenty of food and beverages or water if you're thirsty. This is April's Lunch and Learn. Thanks to those of you that put up with the postponement. There was a big event that happened this time last week. So we punted this one, but I'm so glad that a good crowd could turn out. My name is Kelly Hess. I'm the Executive Director here at Home Resource, and this is my friend Leigh Ratterman. You get to just introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi, I'm Leigh Ratterman. I'm a Climate and Sustainability Specialist with the City of Missoula. And my focus areas at the city are in zero waste, our zero waste goal, and then also climate resilience.
And we're sharing this little microphone today. MCAT is here, records these lunch and learns for folks that can't make it at this time. So just so you know, if you can take notes or not or whatever, but if you love today's presentation, feel free to point people to MCAT to learn about our 0 by 50 plan in Missoula. That's what we're here to talk about today. But before we jump in, because I have the floor, I'm going to just give a tiny Home Resource 101. It's hard to do in just a few minutes because here at Home Resource, we do a lot. If you haven't been or if you're not fully familiar with our reuse store, it's awesome. This is Chris. He's our store manager. And there's a lot of eye candy in the store, things to look at. It changes literally every day. And so we keep around 2 million pounds of building materials out of the landfill in the work that we do in our reuse store. But beyond that, we have so many programs that are focused around education and sustainability and skills and learning. So we have a youth internship program where teenagers sign up for paid internships here at Home Resource to learn about sustainability in our community. We have a zero waste systems program that you'll learn a little bit about today that is connected to the 0 by 50 plan, where we're out in the community helping businesses and events and things like that incorporate green practices into their work. An education program, if you're wondering what ZWAP stands for on the wall back there, that's Zero Waste Ambassador Program. Every fifth grader in the Missoula region gets to go through a learning program where they learn about sort of the zero waste economy and how to be good stewards of our planet, both in the classroom and they get to come on a cool field trip here to Home Resource. We have a wood shop and a workshop where we teach skills and classes, making reuse more accessible to people, both in learning how to do some reuse or repurposing of materials, but also the creative side of reuse and repurpose. I'm sure I'm missing like 100 things. There's a lot that we do at Home Resource. We consider ourselves Missoula Sustainability Center. And so every month we have lunch and learns on the third Wednesday, except on weird months like today, like now, at noon. Free lunch and an opportunity to get together with people that care about the work that we're doing. So I'm so glad you're here. Thanks for putting up with my Home Resource 101. And we're going to jump in. 0 by 50 is Missoula's pathway to zero waste. And we're going to talk about it together. All right. Okay.
Can I do this?
Yeah. I guess I just want to start and like fully recognize that not only through the 0 by 50 plan, but in like almost everyday function, the City of Missoula and Home Resource are really amazing partners. We work so closely with the city, Leigh specifically, but others in other departments, and the work that the city's doing around sustainability and the work that we're doing here at Home Resource really go hand in hand. And the 0 by 50 plan is a great example of that.
Yeah, and I'll just say, kind of in that partnership vein, the City of Missoula is incredibly ambitious in the climate goals that it has set. It has set a goal of zero waste by 2050, clean electricity by 2030, carbon neutrality both in our city operations as well as a community, and then kind of building climate resilience to the current and future effects of climate change. We're a staff of 3 at the city, which we've just grown into. When I started there 4 years ago, it was just me. And so we rely so heavily on these community partnerships and partners with folks like you to help us actually implement our projects and programs, because we couldn't do it without Home Resource, we couldn't do it without all of you as well.
Cool. I put up some fun facts about the 0 by 50 plan because I think they're fun. So adopted by the city of Missoula, officially voted in by city council as a plan for our city moving forward with these goals in 2018. So 7 years ago, been around for a minute, 0 by 50. Co-authored by the city of Missoula and Home Resource staff at the time. Jeremy Drake is in the house, so we have an expert. One of the was a Home Resource employee at the time, but also a co-author of this plan. So I'm a little nervous having you here, Jeremy, because you'll correct me if I'm wrong on anything. But really, truly, just sort of proof that this partnership has existed for a long time, and really that it was a collaborative effort with tons and lots of people. There were community engagement sessions, there were feedback sessions, there were lots of partners in the process, but the actual authors, that get credit are Jeremy and Home Resource and the city of Missoula. Let's see, other communities have adopted similar plans. Welcome. Do you want to talk a little bit about, do you know other communities that have similar plans?
Yeah, so zero waste is a progressive climate ideology. It's a really important climate strategy. I think sometimes when we look at and pay attention to all the suite of options we can focus on sustainability, sometimes zero waste gets pushed aside as oh, that's just recycling, or but there are so many strategies related to zero waste that make it a really important climate action. If we kind of consider the mining and production and transportation and storage and disposal of all of the stuff and food that we use, that accounts for somewhere between 30 and 40% of our entire global greenhouse gas emissions. And so the city of Missoula has adopted as a plan. Other communities have as well. Places like Austin, Texas, San Francisco, Portland, Boulder, Colorado, all have these really ambitious zero waste goals as well. We're unique here because we're a really small city trying to embark on this lofty goal of reaching zero waste as a community. We have, I don't want to get too into the negative, but we do have lots of barriers that make it a challenge here. We have limited capacity, limited funding. We have some not so supportive legislators at our state level that have made it actually illegal for us to implement some of our zero waste strategies that show up in the plan. We have kind of an uphill battle in the city of Missoula to meet our zero waste by 2050, but again, as community partners, we are really working to figure out the best ways to actually implement those, which goes into the next bullet.
Yeah, we currently have a task force that is working on, checking in on the 0 by 50 plan on how far have we come. So a progress check, and then also creating a roadmap for the next 3 to 5 years of what are the priorities going to be now that we're this far into this plan, what's next, and what do we think we'll be able to accomplish sort of short-term or mid-term that we're on this plan. Really important to keep talking about this, so really great that we're having this session today, but also important for us to remember and remind our electeds at the city level and our leaders that this plan was adopted and that it's still really relevant and important. We'll talk more about that later in our presentation. And then, I think fun fact that this plan was designed with 4 guiding principles and 4 paths forward. We'll talk a little bit about what those are, but there was real structure to the plan as it was going. And I just think in learning about it, both from Jeremy and this working group, this task force that we have, the design of the plan is easy to follow and also really laid out in a structured way.
Yeah, and I think we learned last week too from Jeremy that it's pretty novel. The way that this plan is designed is really specific to our community. It was not just kind of copy and pasted from another community. It was built specifically for what would work in Missoula.
Yeah, awesome. So those 4 guiding principles that I mentioned earlier were these 4. Waste is not inevitable, and wasting resources is an unsustainable contemporary cultural norm. And so just that big idea that waste isn't, we don't have to produce waste. It isn't inevitable. There are potential solutions. Like, to me, that is like hopeful and a really, really great starting guiding principle. The idea of involving all Missoulians in the 0 by 50 will require equitable implementation of the zero waste strategies. And so just acknowledging when this plant was designed that, for one, no one person's going to do it alone, and for two, it's going to take everybody, and an equitable approach to making sure that that barriers are reduced and people have access to sustainability in a real way is I think pretty unique and pretty foundational to this plan. You want to go to the next one?
Yeah. So kind of the guiding principle that upstream and midstream solutions should be prioritized over downstream solutions. So the idea of reduce, reuse, recycle, we really want to encourage our community to reduce and reuse before we're even thinking about what do we do with that stuff. When we recycle our materials, by and large, it is getting recycled, but it has to go somewhere else to then be kind of broken down and remanufactured, and that's not happening in Missoula. We don't have many closed-loop systems that can happen here. So we're always really trying to think through and figure out how can we encourage folks to reduce and reuse before we even have to get to the point of figuring out what to do with it.
Home Resource obviously focuses a lot on the reuse piece, right? That 2 million pounds that I'm talking about diverted really is reusable building materials that we're keeping out of the landfill, but for the purpose of reuse. Sometimes for its original purpose and its original intent, and many times for something new and creative and different. There's so many examples of people that come in today, like on the daily basis, that are like, I'm going to turn this door into a desk. I'm going to, whatever the millions of examples are of reuse and repurpose. That's a functional way to use that reuse piece as well.
And then lastly, the transparency and accountability piece to make sure that we're rooted in Missoula's values, that the city of Missoula and its constituents still support this work. That's something that we're doing right now by meeting with all of you. I think it's really easy for a municipality to write a plan and then say, we've done it, checked it, it can go on the shelf and we never have to look at it again. But writing the plan is the easy part. It's implementing all of the work within the plan that's the hard part, and that's where we're continuously gathering and reconfiguring and trying to figure out what are the best things we can do, what's the low-hanging fruit, what are the things that we need to build political support for, apply for grants, or all of those pieces to continuously provide accountability and share that out with our community.
Awesome. The 4 paths to 0 by 50 really fall into these buckets, and I think they're related to those guiding principles, but the idea of access, right? Access for anyone, equitable access for anyone in our community to the idea of reducing our waste footprint. There's a whole category around infrastructure. That's another piece that I'll just shout out to Home Resource. That is a piece. What can we do with, how might we be able to process more materials, reuse more materials, keep them sort of in that circle of reuse by having better infrastructure. There's many other examples of that. Having local compost, for example, commercial compost here in Missoula. That's a huge infrastructure piece and one of the wins associated with this plan that our community owns, our local compost facility. Education. I was already, blowing the whistle or touting the horn for Home Resource and our education programs, but that includes, again, conversations like this, making sure that our community is aware of opportunities for interacting with reducing our waste footprint, and having that. The Zero Waste Action Month right now that Home Resource helps coordinate, but with many, many partners, is a pretty great opportunity to reinforce the message of education. But we know that we can't just check the box of everybody knows about this now. No. We got to keep the conversation going and make sure that education is a component. And that was smartly written into the plan as a way for our community to achieve these lofty goals. And then policy. You want to talk about that?
Sure. So we can provide access. We can provide all of the systems for folks to do things. We can educate you on why it's important. And sometimes we just have to make it happen through policy. I would say that's probably our most challenging piece, just because of kind of our limited local authority to require things here in the city of Missoula. But there are certainly policies that show up in the plan and that we're working towards that would either kind of hold ourselves accountable as the city of Missoula, like we have to do the things that we're encouraging the rest of our community to do, but then also kind of looking at policies that would support zero waste actions within our community.
Sometimes those policies are like at the local level, or right, like what can we do right here in Missoula? And other times, right, it's through the legislative process at the state, or maybe through Congress at the federal level. Those are a little trickier than our bubble of Missoula. Well, they're all tricky. They're all hard. Policy is hard. There's a lot of rules around how policy can get changed. There's a lot of rules on how you can get something on a ballot or put it in front of a vote or those kinds of things. But we are having some local wins. Right now there's a policy on the governor's desk. Is it still on the governor's desk? Hasn't been signed yet. Yeah. I check in with Jeremy for all my facts. To that finally, after 5 times of being proposed through our local legislature, the discontinuation of single-use styrofoam passed both the House and the Senate at the state level and is sitting on the governor's desk to phase out single-use polystyrene. So pretty amazing. That would be an example of a policy win connected to this work around zero waste. So.
Yeah, and on that topic, on the state and federal stuff, it's not always legal or appropriate for the city to advocate strongly for these sorts of things, and so that's another reason why we rely on our community partners to be those strong advocates, to go to the state level and really advocate for these bills to be passed.
Great. So here are the goals that are written into the plan. 0 by 50 waste reduction targets. So the goal is 90% by 2050. Zero waste, I don't quite understand it yet, but zero waste, to achieve like the definition of zero waste, it would be 90% waste diversion is zero waste. So that doesn't do the math. You think, oh, there's 10% left. But it's true of that. That's what the definition of zero waste is 90% gets diverted. Because we're realists, right? We're realists that it's never going to be 100%. And that's a thing that in our education programs, when we talk to fifth graders, when we talk to 10-year-olds, it's not about being perfect. It's about striving, right? I love this quote down here: zero waste or darn near it, right? Like that would be amazing. So the big goal is zero waste by 2050, a 90% reduction in our waste footprint by then. Target number 1 hits right now, this year in 2025. The goal was to have 30% or better reduction from when this went into effect 7 years ago, right? Target number 2 is 5 more years from now, 40% or better. Target number 3, 60% or better. Really working towards that by 2050, could we get to 90% reduction? And so we'll check in on where we're at with these goals. They're lofty. Good job. Lofty goals written for our town. Here's some progress highlights. There are so many to call out, and this has been a fun part. We're just 2 meetings in with this task force of sustainability leaders in Missoula that are meeting. We're just 2 meetings in, and what we're doing is we're going through and we're checking in on the actions and the goals, and like trying to document and give ourselves credit, ourselves meaning the community, credit for the progress that we've made according to this plan along the way. And there are a lot. This is a link, and so we'll share this presentation out, but you can see this action plan and timelines if you click on that link once you get the email after this event. Do you want to talk about some of these?
Yeah. So Home Resource, kind of in conjunction with the city, but largely led by Home Resource, started a program a few years ago called Pledge Zero, which is not only a business sustainability program, so they go to local businesses and try to figure out how can we get you to zero waste, and really focusing on that low-hanging fruit piece of like restaurants and folks who could divert a lot of material. But also started this event program to really help some of our larger events in Missoula become zero waste. So you might have seen stations like this or folks like this volunteering at the fair, which is huge. I mean, Home Resource goes out there for the entire week. It's a week, right?
Yeah.
The full week. And they're there from morning till night, sorting through stuff, training folks, teaching people on how to properly sort. The Missoula Marathon, Pride Fest, River City Roots Festival. Those are all huge events that lots of people go to that until Home Resource stepped in and helped, we're really just throwing a lot of things away. And so they work with the vendors to try to get the right materials and then provide the infrastructure. And it's been so exciting and really incredibly successful. I think, Kaylin, what was the fair's diversion rate last year?
It was like 86.
82% of the materials at the fair, for that week-long fair, were able to be diverted from the landfill. So that's, something hugely to be proud of that didn't really exist in our community before.
Certainly takes a lot of person power to make that happen, but the pre-work of having it so all of those food vendors at the fair were using compostable serviceware, right? So the little boat that you get your nachos in was compostable, coupled with the fact that we have that compost facility here in Missoula and working with the haulers to make that all work. But really, I don't know about you, but you go to the fair to have fun. You go to the fair to ride some rides or see a rodeo or those kinds of things, and like maybe not top of mind awareness for everybody that walks through the gate to go like, hey, and how can I be sustainable today, or how can I reduce my waste footprint? But making it easy and having the fair's partnership in that not only did we work with vendors ahead of time, but it was a requirement, right? Not a policy per se, but like a requirement for them to use compostable materials. And then, holy smokes, pretty easy to achieve those really high numbers. We think we're going to get to zero waste, maybe this year at the fair. But it's also like 150,000 people or something like that visited that event. And so by having the systems in place to make it easy for people to participate, stations, volunteers that help educate, right? We're incorporating lots of those objectives into one event and making it easy enough to sort of proof that it's possible if the systems are set up to support the process.
Yeah, and another example of kind of infrastructure supporting action within our community is compost. So the city bought the compost facility, so it's now a municipally owned compost facility, which then started kind of allowing for private business to pop up. So Missoula Compost Collection, Soil Cycle, different organizations can now go around and collect and actually create a business to collect their compost and bring it to the compost facility to be broken down and made into a soil amendment. And it's just a really great kind of example of a holistic partnership community-wide that, it took the city to maybe invest in that infrastructure so that we could kind of expand what we were able to accept, and then these businesses and then residents to then support the businesses by residents and businesses supporting the collection businesses to then get that stuff. And so it's really like a closed loop model within our community, which is really cool.
And shout out to Missoula Compost is now here at Home Resource. Their office front is just on the other side of that wall. So that's just 1 month new, but they're trying to, again, to make it a little bit more accessible for people to learn and sign up or buy compostable serviceware and things like that. You can do that right here, just on the other side of that wall. Missoula Compost has an office.
And then just another kind of highlight, downtown recycling stations. You might see recycling stations that look like this pop up more and more downtown. It's not a huge diversion opportunity, but it is a very visible, tangible way people can participate in sustainability. And the way I always talk about it at city meetings is it's like, how does somebody know when they come to Missoula that we care about sustainability? Recycling bins, and hopefully in the future compost bins for the public to use, are a really great signifier that we are a sustainable community. Yeah.
We added this last year in July, we added year-round household chemical collection here at Home Resource. So this is what the container looks like, if you will. It's just on the other side of mud on Home Resource's property. And it is operated and run by the county and the Water Quality District. Really, the idea of household chemicals not being dumped in our alleys or thrown away in our landfill and then seeped into our aquifer potentially is a water quality issue. And so they operate the facility, but it's here on Home Resources campus, and we were able to make that happen year round. Again, back to sort of what's that partnership look like and how is that? So accessibility was greatly enhanced by us opening this year-round household chemical collection. It's pretty simple. You can go onto the Home Resource website and schedule an appointment, open a few days a week, expanded hours as the weather gets warmer, and for a small fee that also has like a sliding scale if people need it. People can sign up and drop their things off. If you've been around for a while, you remember Missoula used to have has waste days. So like once a year, big has waste days. That corner of your garage that had the chemicals or the things that you didn't know how to get rid of, you could take them there. And this is sort of our year-round alternative to that. So no more has waste days, just year-round opportunity to get that, dispose of things in a safe way. We now have zero waste stations in K through 8 public schools. So that's a huge win for us. And that was something that Jeremy led. I keep calling you out, but in partnership with the schools, and really did the deep dive to figure out how to make the economics of it work. Right? There's a confined setting in a cafeteria of kids are coming through every day. How much trash are we producing? What if we added zero waste stations, meaning recycling and compost, and could we add those pickups for schools? And the economics of it worked out because we were able to reduce enough waste. They have fewer trash pickups and now could add compost and additional recycling pickups through the whole school. And that sort of is in conjunction with this Zero Waste Ambassador program, right? So we're meeting kids where they're at, teaching them these skills, showing them like, how do the bins work? How does a zero waste station work? What do I put in which bin when? And we're talking like kindergartners, little 5-year-olds that can go in and in the first weeks like learn, okay, here's what I do with my leftovers. Here's what I do with those pieces. And diversion opportunity, and again, that education piece is really, really significant. Go ahead.
Are those stations in the hallway? Are they in the lunchroom or both?
Yeah, they're in the lunchrooms. They're in the lunchrooms. I didn't have a real picture of one, but this is sort of what they look like. Okay, great. I didn't spend a ton of time searching, but they're cool.
They're all over in the
Yeah.
schools. Definitely cafeterias. Some schools want them in the hallways, others don't.
Yeah.
Some have stations like what's in the cafeteria in the classroom, so because they have all the breakfasts are in the classroom, so then it's sorted in the classroom. So they're really, it's a full integration.
Excellent.
Go ahead.
Is there any hope to expand that to high schools?
Yes.
There is hope.
There's always hope. There's always hope.
Yeah.
And a little bit less different cafeterias set up, right? Because we have open campuses in Missoula at our high schools, and coffee carts and Spartamart little thing. I mean, there's so many different things in high schools. Yeah, a little complicated. But a win, another progress highlight. Having those and again hitting multiple buckets in priorities. Let's see. Well, I added this ad. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. So my position, I assume you're talking
Yeah.
at the city. So like I mentioned, when I first started 4 years ago, I was the only climate sustainability specialist at the city. My first thing I did was get in there and say we need more people and really advocate to hire more staff because we have so many goals. I was like completely underwater with trying to implement clean energy and carbon neutrality and zero waste and climate resilience under one 40-hour work week. So I have more capacity to step into this, and it's really exciting because we haven't been able to do that at the city level before. We kind of adopted this goal and then passed it along and said, okay, do what you will with it.
Yeah.
And now we can have more of that partnership and collaboration.
Yeah.
And then
And-
I guess I already
Yeah,
mentioned.
we mentioned Pledge Zero. This is a few of the businesses. There's a handful, but really Home Resource primarily is doing these consultations with businesses, helping them, look through and review, do audits of their waste streams, and then figuring out what would it look like to reduce the waste footprint. There's a lot of businesses that have been involved with Pledge Zero since we've adopted that, and right now we're in continued conversations with the airport. And I bring that up because what Leigh was mentioning earlier of like, how are we showing all of the visitors to Missoula our values? How are we showing people when they land right here in our town of like, hey, this is a priority for us, and I think that the tourism industry is a really interesting one to think about when you think about waste, when you think about single-use everything, right? Glad that we're continuing this Pledge Zero and the idea of what are some big institutions that could help us make sure that zero waste is available. Yeah.
Do you coordinate any with the university? You get help from them and
Yeah.
maybe internships to help you out?
That's brilliant. University has a sustainability team that could be like another list on here. It's not like directly related to the 0 by 50 plan, but they have some leaders on campus now, and we did some consultations with some of the big events that they had, like that big concert series last year when Pink came and whoever else came. That was when they were sort of rolling out zero waste in the stadium for the first time, and I'm glad to have seen. I've been there recently for a few different things, and those stations are still set up, and they've changed a little bit of their vending mechanism. But yes, university is one of those big institutions in our community that could have a significant impact the more and more we can bring people on board.
Yeah. And Kaylin, if you don't mind me calling you out,
Yeah.
a success story of
Yeah.
a university intern who worked with the city and now is a home resource employee and staying in zero waste in our community, which is really great.
Our zero waste systems manager, Kaylin. Yeah. So what's next? We touched on a little bit of this task force, really with a few goals of checking in on the 0 by 50 plan and Missoula's pathway towards zero waste is making 3 to 5 year recommendations that we can share both with the community, but our board here at Home Resource and City Council of like, hey, here's how far we've come, and here's what our recommendations are for the near future for this plan. And then identifying, I really, if you know me at all, I like to focus on the successes, but we also have to call out the challenges. There are a lot of challenges for incorporating some of these goals, and if we're going to really do this, we have to figure out and identify like what those challenges and barriers are so that we can have a bigger impact. And so calling those out as well. Now that we've been working for many years on like implementing this plan, some of them have sort of risen to the top. Oh, this would be easy if this thing changed, but it's really hard because there's that challenge.
And then one thing I'll just add on that, the 3 to 5 year recommendations, we're really looking to hone in on things that are implementable and realistic with our community given what we have today. We're seeing drop-offs in federal funding, we're seeing less state level support perhaps, so like what can we actually achieve here? I think one of the things that we are noticing is that there's an urgency. I mean, climate change is happening at a much more rapid pace than any of us could have predicted 20 years ago. We're seeing all of those effects here in Missoula year over year to a more degree. We're seeing that windstorm that happened here that nobody could have predicted. We've learned a ton of how to kind of build community resiliency to support the safety of the people of our community. We're seeing more drought. We're seeing hotter summers, drier summers. Not quite this year, but lessening snowpack over time. That's really making us feel like we need to be doing more. And we unfortunately need to be doing more with less. And so a lot of the work of this task force is really honing in on what can we do and how can we be kind of realistic in what we're setting forth.
I guess I just put this bullet on like community-wide collaborative efforts in showing that both we're not able to do it alone. We know that at Home Resource, we know that at the city, but also inviting in partners like the university, like the airport, like you all, frankly, to engage in the conversation and make sure that we're approaching it not from a broad standpoint, from a collaborative standpoint. And so really wanting to invite people in. So once we get these recommendations, they'll also then be what's the next step and how do we share that out with the community and make things, these tangible things that we're gonna identify inclusive. So excited about that. That was our presentation. Yes, questions, go ahead.
So the thing I want to hear about most of all is what's going to happen with glass recycling. It just kills me. I can't throw it away, so I'm drowning in glass. And I know there has to be a way to do this.
Yeah.
Anybody thinking about that at all?
It has been a topic of conversation for a decade.
For a long time.
We have
Yeah.
glass
Yeah.
recycling in Missoula though.
Yeah.
There is glass recycling.
There's an organization called Recycling Works that will either do pickups or they have drop-offs scheduled at certain times throughout the year, quarterly, thanks. And so you can drop off food grade glass for recycling with Recycling Works. And so there's a fee associated with it, but it is an option right now in Missoula. So
they just cart that off to someplace else, don't they?
They take it to Momentum Recycling in Salt Lake City, Utah.
yeah.
Why
But,
can't we use it here?
well, let me tell you what they do with it in Salt Lake City first. They turn it into fiberglass insulation for homes. So it really is a long-lasting recycling of this material, right? It's going to go into a building and it's going to stay there for a long time. So it's a really great use of it. The problem with using it in like roads or construction in Montana is there's so much cheap gravel in Montana that there's no economic incentive to crush and process glass to make it into a product that someone can just dig out of the side of a hill somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Mud over there used crushed glass in a project. If you walk over there, you can see it's still there on the ground. And there are projects across the state that have used crushed glass, but the story of recycled glass in Montana, as you know, it's like very long, and there's been a lot of different twists and turns. And as far as recycling, the solution we have now with it going, they only ship it when they have a full load and it goes on a truck that's going to Salt Lake City anyway, is the most, maybe the stickiest solution that we've found yet for Montana, for Missoula specifically.
Thank you.
And the last thing I'll say, just I don't work for Recycling Works, but they're a nonprofit organization, and at their drop-off events, they have a suggested donation. It's $1 a gallon, and when you get up to $30, they're like, you can pay us more if you want, but if you have 100 gallons, we'll take it. You know, if you want to give us $30, it's great. If you want to give us $100, great. So, you know, they're really doing it for the right reasons, and they try to address that access piece.
So that's
by
4
making it
times
cheap.
a year?
Yeah, it's coming up in June is the next one.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that it's interesting to think about recycling in Montana, let alone Missoula, because there really is like this infrastructure piece. There is like what economically makes the most sense, what facilities do we have, and which ones make sense for us with the volume of material, depending on what it is, to like have locally. And there's challenges around building infrastructure as well, because there could be pollution that's created with putting a plant right here in Missoula, for example, or things like that. So again, I think that there's creative solutions that we've navigated in so many different ways. Not to say that it's perfect, but glass is one, for example, that we have decided, or like Jeremy said, it's the one that stuck the most of like, hey, let's gather up all the glass, get a full load, ship it to the closest place possible that we know for sure is turning it into the next best material that has a long-lasting impact. So not perfect, but at least something that
And when you
is
mentioned
working.
the we know for sure piece,
Yeah.
I think that's a really important piece of zero waste, because there are a lot of misleading recycling happening. It's not always necessarily bad or harmful, but one thing that I think of when I think of glass is I used to work down in Colorado, and Denver accepts glass in their single stream recycling. And what they do with it is they crush it up and they use it as landfill cover. And so nobody thinks that when they're putting their glass in the recycling bin. You imagine it's getting,
Turned into
broken
another
down, or
glass.
turned into another glass, or turned into fiberglass or something. And I know a lot of people are really upset when they hear that, because they have a different idea of what they're doing when they're recycling. So the fact that we can actually tell the story of the glass recycling beginning to end, I think is a really benefit for our community.
Go ahead, Jeremy.
I was just going to follow up on the one of the best solutions is figuring out how you can reduce the amount of glass in your life. And so I've been challenging myself to figure that out, and figuring out what are the things I buy that are in glass and are there alternatives? And like at shopping at a good food store with their bulk and refill, there's a lot of places where you can actually like soy sauce, for instance, right? You can bring your own glass jar or bottle and you can fill it up. And that's one less glass jar or bottle that you need to figure out what am I going to do with now if you just buy it off the shelf in a grocery store. So
I don't think they let us do that now.
yeah, there's some things you can't bring your own containers on. Things that you scoop out, like the yogurt, you can't bring a home container. You can use one of they have reusable containers you can use.
No, they have new single-use plastic.
They do have those, that is true. And they also have a program called the Eco Takeout Container.
Yeah.
And you can give them a $5 bill and they'll give you a container that you can use. You trade in the one you've used at the front desk. They give you one that's been sanitized and you can use it anywhere in the store, even for the yogurt. If you're tired of the program at any point, you give it back to them and ask for your $5 back. So it's just a deposit and it actually ultimately costs you nothing in the end if you decide it doesn't work for you. But that's one of the things I've discovered. Hey, there is a way that I could reduce my glass or my plastic, and that's one place that really is setting people up to figure out how to do it.
Yeah. Go ahead.
If you are a food establishment in Missoula and you're doing food, whether it's for takeaway or for in the restaurant, and then you might have leftovers, things like that, and you wanted to be more mindful and utilize compostable materials, things like that. I'm wondering if there is a local expert or anybody who can work side by side with that restaurant or to-go establishment to say, this is a product, because every restaurant is unique. You've got oils, you've got hot food, you've got cold food, to like kind of partner and walk alongside them and say, these are the products that make sense for your particular food.
I would think a first stop would be Kaylin in our zero waste systems. I think next and sort of alongside that is our friends at Missoula Compost, because they're really passionate and want to figure out the right solutions or figure out what that plan is. But that's sort of exactly what Pledge Zero is intended to be. Like, how can we handhold the process and help, especially when there's the will, can we help figure out the way to make that happen?
That even for existing places that I think have compostable containers, like here is downtown in the hip strip. Like, I think they're compostable, but I'm not sure. Like, they're not labeled compostable. The folks that work there,
Don't know.
not really sure.
Yeah.
I just wonder if just a little bit of emphasis would put it over the edge and say, yes, it is compostable. Or
what I notice sometimes is I just know that there is an investment to buy the compostable material. It takes a teeny bit, maybe more effort, sometimes a little bit more dollars to buy that, particularly in a restaurant setting. And I'm always amazed when I go to the restaurant and they have the compostable cup or they have the compostable to-go container, but they don't have compost in the zero waste station.
Yep.
And so throwing the compostable serviceware product into the garbage, into the landfill, isn't really, I don't know, the best solution. So probably better than plastic, but go ahead.
It does.
It's better than plastic.
Displace fossil fuel as a feedstock, which is a great thing to do.
Yeah.
And if you can compost it, it seems like that is also a good thing to do. It's complicated though, especially with compostable plastics.
Yeah.
Because while they're made from plants, not fossil fuels, they need certain chemical inputs to give them the properties that make them stay in the shape of a cup or a bag or whatever. And it turns out those are the same chemicals they use in the fossil fuel plastic. Then they're fossil fuel derived chemicals. And they have lots of things that are not awesome in that we know are harmful to human health and other life forms. And so it's a little complicated when you're like, well, we should definitely compost that. Because at the end, we don't see the product anymore. It has composted. Yet there's chemicals that are also now in that compost product leaching out. And this is why the entire state of Oregon, all the composters said, we don't want any of that stuff. Because we know what's in it and we don't want it. And so it's a tricky thing to say, this is the best option for you as a restaurant to invest in these things, because it's actually very complicated. And there are certification programs out there that will tell you, okay, this is a certified compostable thing. They haven't quite yet caught up to the chemical additives.
I think the lesson or message is it is complicated, and so having resources available to like help coach and navigate, and again, maybe not perfect, but certainly better, and engaging in the conversation, especially when we see those values like, oh, I recognize that this business wants to care about this, and so whatever support we can offer in that way is
And what are the alternatives that truly are sustainable?
Sure.
That would be a good
reuse.
recommendation
Totally.
for a restaurant.
Totally.
Yeah.
Did you have something?
Yeah, this is kind of a basic overarching question, but how does all this get measured? You know,
Yes.
say a 30% reduction
Oh my goodness.
Or 50, like what is,
Mm-hmm.
how are we weighing everything
Yeah.
somewhere?
Yeah. We don't know. We don't know our current conversion rate. It's a project we've been working on for years to collaborate with different community partners to gather that data. So really it is ultimately either a weight measurement or a volume measurement. And we require everybody in our community who handles waste to give us that data. And so that's really where we're kind of stuck and trying to work through the systems to get that data so we can truly understand. We can make some assumptions and have made assumptions based on cities like ours, per capita, but that doesn't really tell us the unique data from our specific community. Kelly had a cool idea recently about, given that we haven't been successful yet in getting actual waste diversion, is that we can measure kind of over time, like how many people are diverting to places like home resource. Like as our population grows, they do a really great job of measuring how many materials they get. We can kind of make some assumptions based on those numbers about kind of the support for reuse and recycling within our community, but we really do need that data to know. So we are hopeful to get it by the end of 2025 because that is our interim goal date that we have committed to.
Do we have a baseline from 2018?
No.
Well, there is a study that was published in 2021 based on 2019 data.
Well, that was
a
when we
desktop
hired
study.
to make the assumptions based on.
Right, and that's used in a lot of places. It's a comparable study, or like, and it's done by an organization that does this. They've got a huge database of where they have sorted through the trash of particular communities, and so they gave us a baseline that we're supposed to, that we can use.
Definitely one of the barriers or challenges that we'll call out when we're saying like, hey, how far are we? What have we done? One of the challenges is we don't have access to the data. We don't have access to the data because we don't know, the city doesn't own our landfill. It's privately owned, and our garbage is hauled and transported in different places to different spots and all of the different things. It's complicated. And so, but not having that baseline information, particularly from the landfill side of like, is that diversion happening, is a challenge, for sure.
So, what is it, Allied Waste, do they actually weigh the garbage?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Every
I never even
Yeah.
thought about that.
Yeah, every truck that goes in, every container that is dropped off, they know
And we don't have
exactly.
access to that.
Correct.
They have to report their facility data to the state DEQ, Department of Environmental
Okay.
Quality. But they take trash from the Bitterroot, from Idaho, from the Flathead. They don't measure it just for what's
Specifically
coming from
here.
Missoula.
Okay. Interesting.
Other questions? Yeah, go ahead, Danny.
Home Resources does a great job, the city does a great job. Who is the entity, or is there an entity that coordinates all of your efforts in all of our communities, say in the United States?
No. I don't.
It's just community by community?
Community by community, and different states or different, I would say states maybe is the biggest the biggest area, have different policies or different laws on like what governs how things are done within those borders. But there is not a federal regulation that says, as far as waste reduction is concerned, or infrastructure around this that governs what we do. Go ahead.
Just back follow-up question.
Yeah.
Where does the expertise come from that all you people have? I don't.
Yeah.
And how is that shared? Is there some nonprofit or NGO that oversees
Yeah.
all these different programs?
There are a handful of organizations and sort of collaboratives, if you will, of like-minded or sustainably minded. There's some that exist in the construction world, for example, or the building materials world, like Home Resource is primarily in. That we are a part of like national groups that are talking about this and how to do it best and all of those different things. There's also Zero Waste USA. There's Zero Waste International organizations that recently the Home Resource team, the entire staff team was trained in introduction to zero waste and got certified sort of in that, like the philosophy of zero waste and zero waste education. And so there certainly are big organizations that are national or international that are working on this, that host conferences every year and things like that. So that, for me and for us as an organization, is definitely one of the ways that we're trying to keep up with the information and the knowledge as things transition and share. But it's not like a governing body. It's not, right? It's not, you can be an affiliate, you can be yeah, exactly. And we have an environmental studies program here at the University of Montana, and so a lot of people in this room have went through sort of that formal education process. So really lucky to have that right here at the U. So another resource that we have. Other questions? So I'll just say, in summary, thank you for being here. I'm so glad that y'all took the time to learn about this initiative that we have in the city and to know and help share the word, spread the message that our city is committed to having a plan to reduce our waste footprint. And there's a timeline on it. There's a clock that's ticking. And so there's work that's happening continually. There's certainly more work to be done, but this is one of the priorities and the values that our city has adopted. Our community as a whole. So thanks for listening. You're all welcome to stay and get a little bit more food if you'd like. And just know, third Wednesday of the month, we have these lunch and learns to share about sustainability, topics different every month. Lunch is always free, so you're always welcome to come. Yay, thanks for being here.